Aloha and welcome to CM400 Week 3. This week we are going to be learning more about UX patterns, and Apple's Human Interface Guidelines. I've created a three-part lecture on Apple's Human Interface Guidelines, or the HIG. This introduction to the HIG will help you with your project work in this course. In part 1 of this three-part lecture, I will introduce controls, followed by content views in part 2, and lastly, temporary views in part 3. Let's get started.
So before we begin, let's do a real quick review of what we learned last week. You definitely want to understand the difference between UI and UX. Remember that UI connects the user to the underlying technology. What does that mean? It is through the UI elements that users can perform actions or other tasks. The UX, or user experience, encompasses the entire experience that users have with a product. So the UI is just the interface, the UX is much bigger than that. You want to know, of course, attributes of an intuitive UI. So that's McKay text, page 26. Design principles, Mendoza's 7 UX patterns. If you remember, it's the launcher, the tray, the list, the rotate, the login, the camera, the map location, and then wireframing basics, tools, guiding questions, and goals. So what is the HIG? Apple put together the Human Interface Guidelines to help both developers and designers create elegant and consistent UI and UX on Apple's mobile platforms. Although these guidelines were written by Apple, many of these guidelines apply cross-platform, so whether you're developing for Android or Windows. Beyond just being a guideline, the HIG offers its readers a philosophy about the mobile UX by guiding designers through specific elements and principles when it comes to mobile design. So why follow a guideline? So following guidelines or conventions outlined in the HIG will undoubtedly contribute to the success of your app. Users will be able to learn how to use your app within seconds of opening it and accomplish tasks without stumbling through it. From a design perspective, the HIG offers techniques and suggestions to make your app intuitive, easy to learn, and consistent. And you will also start building your mobile design and development terminology, which is really important if you decide to really move forward in app design, mobile design. Remember that a consistent design contributes to the overall user experience, or UX. Changing up design or color palettes can disorient users. Another great thing that the HIG provides designers is standard sizes of UI elements such as buttons, images, as well as other controls. So just to let you know, when I say UI elements and controls, I will use them interchangeably now in this course. So just to go over one more time, this lecture we're going to be talking about controls. In the second part, we're going to be talking about content views. And in the third part, we're going to briefly go over temporary views. You can access the HIG online at this address here. And then also any of the HIG readings that I assign in your project work, you'll be able to just read right on the web here at this address. If you have any questions, just feel free to email me, and then I'll be able to help you find the HIG. So these are the controls that the HIG outlines. So once again, controls are UI elements that have a specific purpose and way of communicating something to the user. As you can see from this list, Apple has identified 7 different types of controls. Many of these controls are universal and are very familiar among mobile designers and developers. Something to keep in mind when including controls in your app design is deciding whether or not it's absolutely necessary. So you don't want to clutter your UI with too many controls. When adding any UI control to your interface, consider the following factors to help you decide whether it makes sense to include the control or other UI element. So this is from McKay's text, page 66. You want to make sure that any control you add has a purpose. So what does it do? You want to make sure that there's some affordance or visual cues to signal to the user how to perform an interaction. You want to provide body language, so detail of a UI element's presentation, whether that's size or location on the UI or color. And then 4 is, as a designer, you want to make sure the user knows what type of interaction this is. So what we're going to do now is briefly scan over these 17 controls. So the activity indicator. Placement is usually the toolbar or a main screen view. So when I refer to main screen view, it could be anywhere from the middle of the screen or the top third of the screen. Or it could be the bottom half of the screen. So you just have to, as a designer, think about, okay, is the activity indicator important to be on the top half of the screen or the bottom half of the screen? In this case, you probably want it on the top half of the screen. What does it do? It shows that a task or process is progressing. And why use it? You always want to reassure your users that their task is in progress. All right, so here we go to the contact add button. So placement within a text field. What does it do? Lets users add an existing contact to a text field. Why use it? Gives users an easy way to access a contact without using a keyboard or typing in the contact's name manually. So let's look at a full screen view example of the contact add button in context. So when composing a new message, users can press the contact add button, which is right under the cancel button on the screen there, to access their contacts rather than typing the contact's name using the keyboard. Date picker. So the placement is usually going to be in the main screen view. What does it do? It displays components of date and time. And why use it? Allows users to pick a date and time rather than type it in via a keyboard. Once again, you're just enhancing the UX for the user. Detail disclosure button. So the placement typically used in the table view. What does it do? Reveals details or functionality related to an item. Why use it? Provide user with an option to reveal additional information. So let's look at a quick example. Detail disclosure button in a table view. The table view enables users to gain more information about a topic by pressing the detail disclosure button in that particular cell. So this is a great example of how you would use it in design. The info button. So placement, main screen view or in a table view once again. What does it do? It reveals configuration details about an app or options about an app. Why use it? Of course, to allow users to access information easier while using the application. So let's look at another example here. The placement of the info button is at the discretion of the designer, of course. Text is provided, so in this case you can see tomorrow's forecast. So the designer provided that text there to communicate to the user what information will be revealed when the info button is pressed. Label. So placement, main screen view. What does it do? It displays static text. So what this means is it cannot be altered by the user. So there's no option for the user to alter a label. Why use it? To name or describe parts of the UI. And you really want to keep the amount of text in your UI to a minimum. So something to keep in mind. Very discreet labeling on your UI. Network activity indicator. So placement would be in the status bar. That's the very top bar in your user interface. What does it do? Of course, shows that network activity is occurring. Why use it? To provide users with feedback regarding when your app accesses the network. So page control, this is typically in the main screen view, typically near the bottom of the screen or below a series of images or right below the image view. What does it do? Indicates the number of open views and also which view is currently visible. So in this case, if we're using this page control, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 views, but the view that's open right now is 4, the 4th view, and that's indicated by the filled in circle there. Why use it? If it's important to show users how many views are open, and of course it helps users navigate to their desired view. So here's an example of using the page control. Once again, notice that the page control indicates that there are total, in this example, total of 6 views, and the user is currently on the 3rd view. The page control can be a great way to communicate quantity of content to the user. So once again, you're always communicating to the user when you're creating your designs. We've got the picker. So this is different from the date picker. Placement will usually be in the main screen view in line with the content or a label, next to a label. What does it do? It displays a set of values from which a user picks, or they can select one. Why use it? To make it easy for users to choose from a set of values, choices, and they don't have to type anything in. We've got the progress view. Placement is usually towards the bottom of the main screen view. What does it do? Shows the progress of a task or process. So an example here that's shown is downloading. And why is it? Why use it? Provides the user feedback on the length of the task, number of downloads, etc. Another case for using a progress view is enabling users to see how far they are into listening to an app audio or video they're watching. Refresh control. So placement is always going to be near the top of the main screen view. What does it do? It performs a user-initiated content refresh. So in this case, this is the mail app or the email app. The user will pull down or drag down the table view, and then of course this refresh control signals to the user that, okay, I'm going to update your inbox. And then it gives users a way to have the table view update its content. So that's what the refresh control is used for. Segmented control, placement, typically near the bottom third of the screen, the main screen view. What does it do? Linear set of segments, each of which functions as a button that can display different views. Why use it? Use a segmented control to offer choices that are closely related but not mutually exclusive. So we're going to run through an example right now. So this is a pretty simple tip calculator app that I created. And the designer or myself went with a segmented control because the choices of percentage tip are related but different in terms of value. So the user can decide between leaving a 10% tip, 15% tip, or 20% tip. So This is kind of the guideline you want to use when deciding whether or not to use a segmented control in your design. Slider. So placement is usually in the main screen view. What does it do? Allows users to make adjustments to a value or process. Why use it? Gives users fine-grained control over values they can choose. So in this case, the user is choosing between having their user interface screen be dimmer or brighter. So this is what typically you would use for a slider. Why you would use a slider control. We have the stepper. You would use it, the placement would be in the main screen view in line with values that can be changed by the user. What does it do? A button used to increase or decrease a value by a constant amount. So as you can see, there's two buttons right in the stepper. Why use it? Use when users need to make small adjustments to some value. So let's run through an example. In this example, the designer decided to go with the stepper control to allow the user to increase or decrease the number of people in his or her party. Please also note that the designer customized the stepper control to display up and down arrows, opting out for the traditional plus and minus image on the control. So that's something that you can think about as a designer. Do you want to keep that plus or minus image in your stepper control? Or do you want to customize and insert an image that you think might look better for your user interface? And then we have the switch control. Placement exclusively used in table views, so that's the only time you would use a switch control. What does it do? Presents two mutually exclusive choices or states for the user. And why use it? It gives the user an easy way to choose between on and off or yes or no. We've got the system button. It's probably one of the most common controls that you will be including in your app designs. Buttons are very important because they enable users to initiate an action, complete a task, navigate from screen to screen, and much more. System buttons can easily be stylized and customized to match with your app designs. However, you don't want the button to get lost in the design, since that's what the user will be looking for to perform an action or in your app. The placement, of course, is usually in the main screen view, wherever you feel as a designer is appropriate. What does it do? Performs an app-specific action. And why use it? Allows users to initiate an action, complete an action, or type in a text. And then we get to the text field control. Placement is usually in the main screen view where appropriate. What does it do? It accepts a single line of user input. Why use it? Allows users to input text to submit or obtain information. A couple of things I want to point out from a design perspective. You want to consider the following when using a text field on the UI. So customizing a text field to help users understand how they should use it. You can display custom images on either the left or right side of the text field. In the text field example above, you see that the designer added in a curved arrow to indicate to users that this is a text field to input an address or get directions. You want to display placeholder text or permanent hint text in the fields to help users understand type of input. So of course in the first text field you're going to enter your start address, and then the second text field you're going to be entering the ending address. And then lastly, as a designer, depending on what is going to be inputted in the text field, you want to decide what type of keyboard to display that is appropriate or will make it easier for the user to input content into the field. So that's a wrap up for controls. You definitely want to make sure that you match the right control to the right purpose. Be sure to place controls in appropriate places in your UI and provide your users some visual cues or affordance around controls. So that's it on controls for today. In the next part, you'll be learning about content views.